back. Dude, we are live here. This is Johnny. I'm here with Smith. He's a living legend and he's all about sculpting. He's an artist. He's making the kids laugh, clowning around, and yeah, man, he's a sociologist. What do you say, Smith? How you doing today?
Pretty good, Johnny. Thanks for having me. It's pretty cool to see you doing all this out here.
Oh, well, we got to get the word out, man. You got to keep speaking the truth about everything that's important. And I appreciate you so much for doing that. You are prolific at hosting spaces about all sorts of different topics from the serious, going through permaculture to goofing around about people who believe in the flat earth. And I don't know. What do you think, Smith? Is the earth flat?
Someone just asked me. I had this hosted this guy in a space about Atlantis and stuff, and he was like, "Are you a flat earther?" I'm like, "No." It's amazing to me that that someone would want to come into a space and trust me, but literally they don't even haven't really looked into anything I'm into. So I don't know, but yeah, I think people get confused because I'm talking about flat Earth and all this stuff, and I've made friends with some of those guys. But yeah, there was a time where I was like the flat Earth boogeyman, actually. Yeah, it was when I was in Honduras and stuff. A lot of that when I was wearing like the black feather headdress and threatening flat Earthers on the internet, stuff like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was so funny. Yeah, you were making it like a thing against the flat earthers and a whole like little
Oh
oh, it was
man,
great.
it's hilarious. Yeah, I couldn't resist. It's a role of a lifetime, Johnny. Play any actor will tell you playing a villain is the best. So there's nothing more fun than that. And as a clown, you got to play a villain sometimes. Otherwise, people aren't scared. People. That's the thing about being a clown. You don't want people to be afraid of you because they already can be sometimes as a clown. But also not to mess with you, right? Because then they think they can bully you because you're a clown. So you got to show them. Because I'm silly Uncle Bud, man. If a kid's messing around, I'll tell him like, hey, I'm not like one of these clowns who's just gonna, dress up with paint and be real nice and stuff. Like I'm like an uncle. That's why I got silly Uncle Bud. Teach them how to act because it takes a village, and so when they're doing something and you say it, don't do that, or hey man, what are you doing? Like clean this up. You don't just leave stuff. You don't just spill water on the floor and then someone's going to slip and fall. Clean it up. Here, let's do it together. This kind of stuff. Because if their parents say it, they don't listen as well. So yeah, man, Uncle Bud don't take no crap, dude.
I love it, man. You're
No.
all about the decentralization in the community, doing things the right way, and yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
talk about you know educating kids, man. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the government seems to do everything wrong. I don't know what the deal
Mm-hmm.
is with that, but seems like these are challenges we're up against. You were going through the whole permaculture there book on space is just about, and I
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate you helping to get the word out there. This is just man, we're June 1st, first day getting towards summer here, and
Yeah.
you're up in Canada. What are the gardens looking like up there? Are you seeing some flowers coming in?
Yeah, here and there, but man, I'm right downtown, so I'm so locked away from nature, dude. Down here, it's not very cool. I'm actually looking forward to getting out of the city again, coming this week. So, but yeah, actually, there's a garden right at the school because I'm attending school, and so the arts building actually has a garden. So I go over there and sit under the tree and stuff, and yeah, I tried messing around in there. In fact, but I stopped because there's so much finicky about the garden and the students, so I just don't even mess with it. But because I would have taken that whole spot over, man, and made like sculptures and done all this stuff. But I did. I had a big sculpture there, and they got upset and made me move it and stuff, like always. So it is what it is. They
I
actually
love
paid me to make a grass couch there, but it never came to fruition. So whatever. Uh,
oh, that would be cool, a nice grass couch. I've seen one of those before. Pretty cool.
yeah, yeah.
I love that you do sculpting work. I think
Mm,
that's my favorite form of art. Something that you can see in three dimensions and really appreciate, walk around.
mm,
I love this idea you have of doing not permaculture, creating food forests, but permasculpture, really like paying
mm.
attention to the aesthetic. I think that's cool.
Right on. Yeah, it's Mike Hoag. I'm in his book for it. Hoag, Mike Hoag. It's Beauty and Abundance, it's called. He has many books now and other ones that are better sellers than that one, but that was his first book. And my legal name is in there because I don't use my legal name, on the internet and stuff. It's not that hard to find my legal name, but anyway, he calls it Hugel sculptures. Like you were showing me the images before of Hugel cultures, which, as we know, is just a pile of wood that we turn into a garden. But Hugel sculptures is just his way of saying, I'm turning those into sculptures. So I'm using what other people throw away. And I really was doing it because I submitted my portfolio to be accepted as a sculptor. I was going to study music because I had some money left. I was an Air Force vet, so I have some money left to go to school. And I just never finished. I had a 2-year degree in aviation management, and and then I went and studied sustainable living after I met Jacques Fresco and all that stuff. But then I left school. I kept leaving school to do projects and stuff because I came up with a project and then get too busy and then I leave school. So anyway, yeah, I'm back doing that here. And I was on the plateau in Montreal in the French speaking area doing it in the front yards. And people remember because I would basically go door to door as a leaf tender. So I say, you can badge your local leaf tender and they can go door to door. You can do it too. You just got to knock on the door and convince them to do this. And I would take the paper sacks, the sac de feuilles, which is this bag of leaves, right? So, you throw out the yard waste in a paper bag. And so I would say, is it okay to take your bag of leaves? Yeah, sure, take it. And I'd take it and throw it on the pile. But, you tear the bag, throw the bag down, cover that. Worms love to eat that too. And from this kind of material, I would grow food, tea, and medicine, and often in the shadiest yards on the street to prove that you can do it. Because everyone says the same thing, Johnny, everywhere you go. Nothing grows here. They always say that. Yeah, nothing grows here. I'm like, yeah, what's that? What's that? What's that? And so I'm growing sunflowers in the shadiest part of the yard. This should be impossible. And yeah, it's happening. So there's little tricks for the squirrels on that one. You gotta watch out for the squirrels, of course. Yeah.
Wow. These bags, that's how you got the name Jimmy Leaf Tender. I like that. And
Yeah, and
go ahead.
no, it's funny is that when I was clowning, well, when I started to do my clown work more seriously, this little girl in French, the French version of that name, it's just a little pride for me, is L'homme tulipe, which means tulip man. But I've never planted a tulip in my life, Johnny. It's just that to a kid, a tulip is a flower. So really she means like flower man because I'm growing all these flowers and vines and stuff. So that's my French Jimmy leaf tender, So
I like that. Dude, you
mm.
mentioned throwing the bag in the pile with the worms. Was this a brown bag? Because I was imagining a big black plastic bag.
No, it's a brown bag. I mean, that's the cool thing actually about the Francos. They're more into permaculture and stuff, man. So and sustainability and composting, So it's paper bags. I mean, you'll see them from time to time, but largely, yeah, paper bags. Yeah. hmm
I love that. That's great. Yeah, too much plastic. We're like drowning in it. I didn't realize how much of our clothes is made out of plastic until recently. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it became a full-time job for me too, going through the trash because this cool thing about Montreal, they there's more art in the trash in Montreal than there is art in people's houses in the US. You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of art. So I ended up having this backyard studio. A mentor of mine who helped me get the job clowning professionally. He he actually had a spot too in the back and he let me go nuts and I had all these old paintings I set up because I just had a hard time throwing the stuff out. And I just like to collect and curate things and then try to squeeze in my little garden spots. But often I'm just like thinking and brainstorming and like moving stuff around and trying to take pictures to see like what could go where. And look, the problem is that we're so short sighted that it's really, you can't really talk to people in a way where you say, okay, in 3 years it'll be this, in 5 years it'll be this. It's too uncertain. And especially now, people move around so much, right? Because of the housing crisis and everything. And we were talking before, like nothing is sacred anymore. Like, people's family homes or whatever, like your house, it doesn't matter. You just sell everything. Everything's for sale, you know? And so there's no roots, there's no community. It just kind of evaporates. And in Canada, it was interesting, Johnny, because their housing bubble never popped. And so the housing prices are unbelievable in Canada, dude. Like they actually have a TikTok channel called Canadian Real Estate versus Actual Castles. And this dude will show like a small crap house for like $1 million in Canada and then show an actual castle in some other country for less money. It's so wild, man.
What is going on there? What's driving the prices so high? That is wild.
Sure. Well, look, man, we don't treat we treat housing like a commodity instead of a place people need to live, you know? So there was a time I remember it was like people were buying houses for way over the price, you know, the asking prices, and I've never seen so many places for sale ever. And they have a thing too in Montreal where because Quebec is different, man. They do like laws are Franco, you know, old from France and stuff. Um, but they have a thing where if your family, like for example, let's say I have a house and I'm renting. Now all I can say is, okay, I have a family member who's going to move in here, so you have to move out, and legally they have to, like within a year, and then within 1 year of the family member living there, then you can start to rent it again. So it's a trick they use to get people out. They say, hey, my mom's moving in, but really she's not moving in. And then you just leave the place empty or something, and then you re-rent it to somebody else. And also just pricing people out. This is why it's more advantageous to rent often, and then simply keep moving, because that way you're continuing to get a new price, you know, because they just jack the price up and up, and you know there's no accountability often for anything. So
I just think about the demand, like, where are all these buyers coming from? I've heard people say, it's China, and
mm.
I've heard a lot of people own property up there. Have you seen like a lot of foreign investors as far as real estate in this way?
No, it is a thing though. I mean, out in BC it's so bad that people can't own a house, and often you have these a like there was I saw this one piece. It was about, they had this basically a building that was empty because no one lived there, but it was owned by Chinese people because they're investing. So they'll buy a place in order to invest, because in in their culture they don't sell their ancestral homes. So whatever their family home is, they wouldn't sell it because they have honor, Johnny. You know what I mean? They have a sense of honor about that. It's not saying nothing is sacred. Like, man, we sell everything, dude. Like, this is the thing that always got me about being from the US and this capitalist stuff is like everything is just for sale all the time, and it's like that's the highest value we have is money, dude. You know, that's our true religion. Uh, that's what we actually worship, and it is it's not good for people, And this is why I like to talk about the 8 forms of capital and permaculture. Those other forms of capital are so valuable, and that once people look at these forms of capital, like spiritual capital, building capital, a place to live, right? Um, all these other things, but social, especially social capital, I think that's one that's really underestimated. And there's a sense that once you get enough money, you don't need people anymore. You can just move through the world. You don't need any connections because you can stay at a hotel. You can stay here. You can get an Uber. You fly an airplane. Someone's going to bring you food. But then really, you're just kind of alone all the time. You have no connection. Um, and I don't know, that it's just no way to live, man. It's just no way to live, and it really separates us from each other. So uh, that's why
Yeah,
intentional
I
communities,
get,
dude.
yeah, intentional communities. All right, so tell us about that. So
Mhm,
what I see with intentional communities, I think a lot of people think of kind of people living and eating on their meals together, and
mhm,
then a lot
mhm,
of problem with social dynamics can come up. So what do you see as an optimal form of a community like this, or an
mhm.
intentional community, and then like how to overcome some of the big challenges?
Sure, good questions. So right, so intentional community. If you listen to spaces, for example, you hear people because it's going around, man. Permaculture, intentional community is really going around all political spectrums now. It was really more associated with like leftism, hippy dippy type mentalities, right? However, this is why I was making all these friends on the other side of the spectrum, man. On both sides, and they're coming together in these gardening spaces. It's like, wow, this is really exciting, because people want guess what? We're addicted to clean water, clean food, and thriving communities. That's what we actually want. And it doesn't matter who we voted for. That's what we actually want. So instead of waiting for someone to save us, let's actually do it, right? Where everyone's sitting around complaining. So let's use that energy. And look, it's the same group, small groups of people, right? Small groups of people who get everything done, Johnny. And so we don't need a million people to do it. We just need the people who are going to take responsibility. We call it sheepdog guild. Those who are willing to, who don't think protecting others is weakness, and that's part of how community thrives and society thrives. That's why some of our best guys are like, farmer, he's our Marine, I was Air Force. There's other people in the community who feel that way. It's like you get a little more time and energy and money, and then you try to help make sure other people have what they need too, man. That's what makes the community strong. So intentional communities, as I have a joke, like IC.org should pay me, is India Charlie is IC, or intentionalcommunity.org, IC.org. There's intentional communities all over the world. Most people think, and this is the thing that happened when I went back to Michigan and did the project, and I go on the radio and tell people about the project. They're like, so it's a cult? And I'm like, of course I said what everyone says. No, it's not a cult, right? But now it's come, years later. We, that's exactly what someone in a cult says. No, it's not a cult. This is why we always joke and say, yeah, it's a cult, because the point is that it puts us in a self-critical position to say, oh, is this harmful? Because everyone starts their group and they're just like, they don't know anything about group dynamics. They just assume everything will just naturally work out, and they're not self-critical at all. So they don't think they're harmful. They think they're good. But guess what? Best intentions, right? So intentional community, most of them are certainly not cults. They're not even communes. Most are what's called co-living. That means, in fact, the first one I ever saw was in Carolina, and it was just a piece of land in the country. It wasn't too far from the city. It was like off a main route, maybe 5 minutes or something. And they had maybe 20 houses. Some were a little cool and different. Um, and everyone had their own job. They bought their own house, and they all like pooled their money together to get the land. And they had a community center. The kids could play in the land, and they paid someone to grow food, right? Some guy locally farmed the land or something. And that was it. They didn't eat meals together, but they had a system where you only had to cook dinner every 5 weeks, which sounds crazy, but it was cool. Like every 5 weeks, one person was on the calendar, and their job was to make dinner for everyone in the village. And so they would just load up their vehicle and then drive around, which, I mean, the houses, you can throw a rock and hit the houses. It's not like you're driving far. But the point is, you need something to move the food. You put it in there, you drive around, you knock on the door and give them the food and go back to your house, man. That's it. So you're not like in people's lives too much. And so if everyone has their different version of how they want to live, and not everyone wants people in their business all the time, they want their own privacy and stuff, but the security to know that there's other people right there, who you're in the same vibe with, and also that in case something happens, there's people there, and that the kids can be safe on the land. A commune is, to me, if you're going to start community, you do a commune. That's the way to do it, because a commune is like you own your own businesses, okay? Because if you're going to do all that, why would you, to me, you do your own businesses? That's just what makes sense. And the money goes into the community and stuff. And some of the, like the largest eco village in Canada I told you about, I mean, they have big businesses, man. They have a hemp clothing business. They have actually Keops is a catalog, and they sell spiritual stuff like incense burners, or, crystals, all kinds of everything you could imagine though. The difference is, and I had a big gripe with them about this, about the crystals, because I had to blow up with actually people in the spiritual communities and X about crystals, because as a sustainable living guy, you learn about how basically rich Westerners they can pay money to have a nice orange crystal or something so they can feel high-minded and spiritual and look down on other people and think that they're very enlightened, okay? When in fact that the crystal is coming from a situation where these really poor people are like spelunking into caves and dying and stuff just so you can have an orange crystal. It's like this is ridiculous, and it's not, it's completely opposite to what's being portrayed. So yeah, man, there's a lot going on there. So intentional community, the difference between And I started one too in Michigan, and of course I was trying to be edgy and not edgy, but innovative, to try to do something different, to do it in the Harvest City in a bad area, urban, because there are urban versions of these too. In fact, there's one in Montreal. It's an apartment building, a really nice one. It's a co-op, and they own it because otherwise you wouldn't be no, most people couldn't just go buy a building like that. But if you pool your resources, then you can. They're not as closely connected as some communes or whatever. They're not eating their meals together and stuff. But there's a sense of security, and also the fact that you're in it together, that people are going to, not just treat the building like crap because they're renters, because most renters don't treat it, they treat it like they're renting. They don't treat it like they own it. Um, so yeah, there's many different versions of it, man. And often it doesn't work because there's a situation where people are like, hey, let's start a community. And they don't realize what they're saying, dude. Next thing you know, they're partying together and stuff, and they have all these grand ideas, and it kind of evaporates into nothing, or they start a community and it doesn't work out because of personalities and different things. Um, and so there are many. Here's the thing, though: there are models that exist now. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Camp Hill is a great example. There are networks of communities that already exist. So the model's been proven. That's done. So when people go in spaces and they talk about community like it's a pipe dream, they're like, oh, imagine we should buy land and live together. It's like, you guys are talking about this like it's this impossible thing. But people do it all the time. So I think that the more conservative minded folks, you can see the village movement sparking up for them, where they have these more religious type, not to say that on the left they're not religious or spiritual, but more like Christian conservative type communities. And as an anarchist, man, like my belief is that if someone has like in the United States of America, for example, that's part of the reason they taught us in boot camp, man. Like the reason you do this so people can have freedom of religion, so that they can have freedom, which means you can believe what religion you want, you can live how you want, as long as you're not hurting other people. Go form a community. If you don't like the way the world is, then find people like you and create a world where you live like that, and you can live your whole life like that, and that's a good life. There's nothing wrong with that. So I would say to those on the left who are more hippie and think it's something about conservatism, I would say my argument is that conservatism is the base layer of society. Without conservatism, you don't have art and culture. Okay, you have to have the basics first. You have to have that stuff taken care of, and that takes conservatism. And that's the thing, Johnny, is that the word conserve, okay, to conserve what we have, the natural resources, dude. And the guys, it's funny because the kind of guys I grew up with, rednecks, Michigander rednecks, man. My first job was in a bait shop, hunting and fishing and stuff. So you see guys hunt and fish and put the fish back because they want the stock to be there for the next generation. So I think there's a little bit of like, there's a sense that conservatives don't necessarily care about nature or something, but that's just not true, man. Like in many cases, they're very connected to it, more so than others because they live in the country and they hunt and fish and stuff. So,
Well, right, and they're being affected by some of this crazy pollution we see from you mentioned mining, and
mhm.
when people are really going after the resources, like up in Virginia, it's so poor. Well, why is that? Well, it's because it's all been mined and just now nobody wants to. It's not an attraction for people to come live there. Yeah, I want to put this up. Did I spell this right? Let's see if I did this right. ic.org.com.
Yep, that's it. Yeah,
All right,
just
all right.
ic.org. Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah,
And then
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so the Hobo Railroad is using these resources. Okay, and
I've heard you say the Hobo Railroad so many times. What does that mean, Smith?
sure, the Hobo Railroad is just a network that already exists. That well, in my mind, it was when I asked myself the guidance counselor question after the Air Force. If I had $1 million, what would I do? I would go with my free time. I would go to the library and I would read to the kids. And it was one of my favorite ways to volunteer when I was in the Air Force. So how do I do this with $0 or limited budget? And the answer is I use the existing network. And one is intentional communities, which I mentioned. Two is the work exchanges. That's helpx.net, workaway.info, and woofing, which many people know. And then last is couch surfing. So Couchsurfing is its own website too, couchsurfing.com. It's a community where people share space. Okay. You can travel the world and have places to stay. And hopefully the idea is that you exchange it when travelers come through. They have a place to stay. You don't charge money for it. It's not a free Airbnb. It's a cultural exchange. So you get into situations where you stay with people and there it says, look, you stay here. It's 3 days minimum. We're here to get to know each other. This is not a hotel, you know. You clean up after yourself, you cook, you're together or whatever, you do what you do. And sometimes they're not even there. But the point is you can move around the grid this way. And then also it's a lifestyle choice, Johnny, because I think that, well, I knew back then I would rather live on these kind of intentional community farms, not just a farm, but an intentional community farm. It doesn't have to be a full blown intentional community that's listed on the website. It's just the fact that people live there. They care about food, Johnny. Like in the United States, people care about price. Okay. Food quality is very low and we care about price. Everything is like manufactured food like products instead of food. Okay. And yeah, man, that's the Hobo Railroad. So, the intentional community that I helped start on X, okay, and on Discord now. That's the digital layer. It's purple people on the Hobo Railroad. So it's a community that is hybrid. That means that, and there are nomadic communities that exist. Most communities are though at one location, but in this case, you have a hybrid. Hybrid. You have a digital layer, and then you have the what I call the hobos and the homies. Right, the homies hold the homestead, and then the hobos travel. So they travel in groups. If they're younger and stuff, we create accountability so that there's safety and people can travel from one spot to another and find opportunity, whether that be a place to live or for example, the community I mentioned that was the largest in Canada. I mean, it was almost every weekend you'd have families who would come and bring their kids and stay there and see if it was a thing they wanted to do, if it was for them or not. So there's plenty of places to stay, but the thing is, Johnny, most people don't even know that they exist, and if they do, they think they're harmful cults. Okay, but what I'll say is that it's just like any other place, man. You take it for what it is. So you read the reviews, you check it out, and either you like it or you don't. One man's trash is another man's treasure, but the resources are there. And so what the digital aspect of the community likes to do is, like, especially older folks, right, our aunties and uncles in the village, maybe they're at home, they can't travel and do these things, but they can be on their phone and they can live vicariously and be part of it, right? So the ultimate goal is to have a baker's dozen hobos and they travel the railroad and we all watch them and fund them and give, ideally, that there would be a stipend that we would pay through the businesses that we create, and so that way we can watch them on their adventure and take part in it and maybe even meet them on the Hobo Railroad. This is why I travel so much. I mean, I don't think I know anyone, Johnny, who has met as many people on X as I have, and there's a reason for that because I've been working toward this for years, and this tool is very powerful in terms of doing that, because it's talking on the phone again, Johnny, and people don't do that anymore. We really need to hear each other's voices. Text isn't enough. So the other social media platforms don't really have this. And so this is a big part of why I stayed on X, even though it's become incredibly toxic. So,
Even though it's becoming incredibly toxic. You make a great point about the voice, well, gosh, at this point the AI can even fake that, but I don't think they're doing that yet. So,
mm-hmm.
um, yeah, but it's you hear somebody where they're coming from a lot more. It's like a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, when somebody speaks something, you kind of you hear more about how they really feel about it from inflection and everything. So, yeah. But Smith, you covered so much there. So you talk about going to all these communities. Do you have a favorite one you could recommend to people? Because I know some people have had some kind of mixed experiences, and you mentioned safety and so yeah, I think that's a good place. I've been to one that comes to mind. My friend has a great little kind of Airbnb and takes on volunteers sometimes up in if you're up in Oregon. Turning Earth Farms is a real good spot to see about farming. She's got a bunch of goats, see how she's growing her food and everything, and doing farm to table meals. It's incredible. So have you been up that way?
No, I mean, I've been to Oregon, but only for a few days. Yeah. But the thing for me, Johnny, that part of the map, I consider that to be not my AOR. That means area of responsibility. I am from the Great Lakes, okay? And so it's Midwestern, it's East Coast, but really it's Great Lakes. So when I go to the South, for example, I feel like I'm not from there. You know what I mean? It's like and anyone from another country who's traveled the US knows it's a country of countries, right? If I go out west, I don't feel like I'm from there either. You know what I mean? Um, the point is there are other people and voices out there who are kind of leading the way, and especially out west, man. There's more intentional communities there than any other place in the US other than the Northeast. Okay. That's where the Camp Hills are, like New Hampshire, West Massachusetts, upstate New York, Maine, that area. Okay. Other than that, it's Oregon, Washington, California. So in the beginning, this is years ago, I did a research trip to go out there to see if there was enough of these places that existed, because it looked like to me that you could literally walk between the locations. And it's true. I mean, that's how many locations there are. But yes, does that mean that you can easily move smoothly between those locations to the map? No. And that's the problem. A lot of these locations exist, but they don't even know the left hand doesn't know what the right is doing. You have a situation where you have a community here and a community, the next community nearby, they don't know the other one exists. And even if they do, they're not collaborating, they're not trading resources. There's nothing going on there. This is why the network is so important. Like Camp Hill, you have Camp Hills all over Europe. You have them in the Northeast. You have them in the in the Colombian rainforest, dude. They're everywhere. So Camp Hill is a model that's proven, and it's a life sharing model. Rudolf Steiner anthroposophy, Waldorf schools, all that stuff. And I've been to the one I was at in New Hampshire. I mean, it's idyllic. It doesn't get any more idyllic than that. And so you could call me a utopian. I don't believe in utopia. I don't think it's possible to make things perfect. But to me, at least we're aiming in that direction, right? To make it as good as it can be, instead of saying it's doom and glooming and all the stuff. So the original question, like, where do you go? I would say it's a big jump to just go to intentional community, right? You get to know it slower, and this is part of why the process of getting to know people, talking on the phone, learning digitally about what it is, all this kind of stuff. And so it doesn't have to be a place either where they're growing food and doing all this. I'll give you an example. There's someone on X. She won't mind if I mention it. Leanne. She hosted us. She does question of the day, karaoke. She's a real sweetheart. She's in Tennessee. Now we're passing through, and when I pass through, I don't want to put too much pressure on someone, because I figure if if they want to host me or meet up, then they'll let me know. I'm not going to try to pressure people unnecessarily, because I don't want them to feel bad if they don't want to or can't, or who knows, right? So, but she ended up hosting ASMR Ellie and I, and also a couple of characters from their region. Okay. One guy who had driven all the way over from Virginia, believe it or not. So we stayed the night and had a hangout and everything else. And it struck me like this is a place we could camp and even stay longer. That's an example. There is no difference between doing that and staying in intentional community. Okay. Because the vibes couldn't be better. Okay. And it's just relaxed, and we're there talking, we're in community, and there's no pressure or expectation to do anything. At the end of the day, if there's a vibe match, she might find the perfect roommate. That's an example of an intentional community setup. It doesn't have to be 100 people growing food and stuff, okay? It's just people that can work together, vibe together, or live together. And we know how hard that can be to live with someone else, okay? So finding that, just even as like a roommate finder, is a good way to look at it too. So this comes back to how we define what intentional community is. And the answer for a lot of people might be to have an online digital community, which is also hybrid. So they have meetups, okay? And they meet in certain places. And then eventually, perhaps, yes, they will. But I think necessity is the mother of invention, Johnny. So, and this is something I could not have predicted, even though one thing I did predict was that caravanning and RV life and van life would explode because of solar and electric technology. But what also happened was, out of necessity, people are living in their vehicles, okay, because they can't afford a house, dude. And so these things are kind of naturally forming. Necessity, mother of invention, dude. They're just trying to find a place to go, and guess where the best place to go is? Intentional community. someone that has land, that has clean water, that's growing some food. And if people come and it doesn't vibe, look, when you're in Rome, you live like the Romans. If you don't like how they do it, leave. Otherwise, while you're there, you play along with what they're doing. You don't have to drink the Kool-Aid, as I always say. And this is why I always say purple people come for the Kool-Aid, stay for the kindness. Because a lot of people, Johnny, believe it or not, do not know what it means to drink the Kool-Aid. They don't know that story. They don't know about Jonestown. They don't know about all that stuff, and they should know. Okay, this is part of the education, brother. Because if I,
Was that the Heaven's Gate cult where they
yes,
all
dude,
drink the Kool-Aid and
yes,
they died in their Nikes? Yeah.
dude, it's so much even worse than that, dude. It's real bad. And so the point is that that's a real thing. And I have like over 10 nieces now and a nephew. So to me, I'm building this for kids. And when they grow up and become 18 and 20 years old, that they would be able to go to travel these places and be safe, dude. So if I don't feel comfortable sending my own people there, then I can't recommend it to everyone else. At the same time, it, all the problems that people are facing now, the cost of living, you can't get clean food. Where do you get it? The water isn't even drinkable, dude. So what do? Well, look at ic.org and you can see the different communities and you can see how much of the food they produce, all these different data points, right? Stats. One of the most shocking things, Johnny, is the cost of living per person. It is shockingly low, okay? Because this thing you realize is that it doesn't actually cost that much to live. And yet, because we are so determined, well, it's individualist society versus the collective, right? This is the great thing about the new world, right? In America is that you can have your own individual life. You can be who you want to be, etc. But then there's part of that sacrifices the collective, right? What's good for the group. And so like when you go to France or something, it's the opposite, right? The collective matters more. It's more about fitting in and doing what's good for the group. And also I think that has to do with the fact that it's more densely populated, and so the way you live more directly affects your neighbor, etc. But look, man, Amer- a lot of people see the US as like kind of crazy because we are, dude, and also like a little too free. And that's why you have this like land of cults, so to speak. But look, to me, everything is a cult, and this is something we talk about all the time. In fact, it was on Joe Rogan. I think it was Eric Weinstein. It was a clip that came out where he was talking about religions versus cults, and basically, what you say a religion is the consensus is what a religion is 5 million people, a cult is 5 people. So it's you know what I mean. There is no difference once you get to a certain size. It just becomes a religion because it's small. It's called a cult. So what they're called is new religions, Johnny. And in fact, I interviewed Dr. David C. Lane, who's professor of new religions out in California on Spaces. And he goes to these conferences. They're called new religions, you know. And if you say cult, it's considered to be a bad word or like harmful or whatever, and you don't say it. It's like disrespectful. But again, to me, it's the point of being self-critical. Um, the idea that there should be a base layer of self-critical thought, and otherwise, man, it can go all kinds of crazy directions, and we've seen what those things can be. So I think that sunlight sanitizes everything, bro. If you simply put things where people can see them, just like the blockchain, right? Crypto, transparency. If you make things transparent, people operate in secret, don't they, Johnny? It's everything's a big secret because they want to keep their advantage and stuff. But making things open source and things accessible, and so that people can see what's going on, because there's a culture of corruption, okay, with human beings, okay. And we say it's the government and stuff. We are the government. It's us, okay. That's us. So what I'm saying is that this is the future of nation states. Like nation states will break up into smaller groups, and because you know why? Because people will have more individual power, sovereignty. Okay, that used to be only for kings. Okay, but now the idea that each person, this is the height of individualism, right? It's like each person is their own like sovereign. Okay, they have their own rights, and you can't come and tell other people how to live. And as soon as you start to do that, okay, but then they're going to go and say, you know what? I don't want to listen to this. I'm going to go live the way I want to live. And slowly but surely, people are going to take they're just like with the social media and spaces, how it levels the playing field. Obviously, it's not level, but it's as level as it's ever been. Okay, and it's going to continue to become more level. And as individual people get more power and more collective power, it's like Bill Mollison said, co-creator of permaculture. This like solar. He was talking about solar. The way to do it is in community. You do like for the neighborhood. You all invest together. That makes sense. Not to be a hobbyist or some guy who's like, yeah, great, you can make all these systems, and we're all very impressed. You're talented. Like most people can't do that. Okay, so you find, not you can't be a dentist and an electrician and a gardener. You know what I mean? So you need different people in the village, and this is how we've lived in the society. Everyone's always talking about competition, Johnny, but cooperation is really what's gotten us this far. And this is, I think, the designer's manual. If there's any argument it's making, it's saying that cooperation is way more important and more notable for when you look at biological systems and all these things. That cooperation and mutualism is actually more defining and more characteristic and more worth talking about than competition. The old Red Queen effect, where the Red Queen in biology, the Red Queen is running in place or running really fast to stay in the same place, meaning evolving and changing just to adapt to life so you don't get eaten up by another creature. Um, so yeah, man, these are all puzzles for us to solve. But this is what, coming back to the word ecology, which is the bread and butter of permaculture design, and that is the relationship between the organism and environment. The relationship, that's the key word. So we are the organism and we're in the environment. But what is the relationship? We don't have much of a relationship with it, Johnny. And because when people talk about nature, they point and they say nature, like that means a forest. You know, it's like over there. It's like separate from us. So we put ourselves out of that system because we're so anomalous. Like we're so weird. I mean, the fact that we exist, we walk around, we wear clothes, or like these, I don't know, advanced monkeys or whatever, and we just destroy everything because we don't have enough space. So we're just spreading out and making more space. We're like, build a road, do this, like destroy everything. Because at the end of the day, we're just like, we got to live. Um, and these kind of mentalities of like being super hippie and going back to nature. It's all well and fine, dude, but it's not the future. Like we have a grid, we have a society, we have humans flourishing over Earth. So this is why also these, the talk about going to Mars and stuff, and the feeling of people, some people that think, man, we got to get to another planet or something because humans are going to blow each other up and we're going to destroy ourselves. Like one nuclear bomb, the nuclear bombs now, Johnny, I mean, there'll be nothing left. So I think there's nothing more important than figuring out how to live peacefully together and cooperating as human beings, because there's going to be nothing left for the generation. I mean, there's going to be nothing left of humans, Johnny, let alone the next generation. You know what I mean? So this is why we're
Oh
working
my
together, and
God.
I appreciate working with you, man.
Hey man, likewise. Yeah, cooperation. We were talking about the division. We're in this culture right now of distraction, and yeah, it's polarized, and it's like a giant psyop to make us kind of so that we can't work together, right? Because it's like you say, we got to work together to solve these problems we have, and you know, it came to mind earlier. I can't get over this. They say 24 out of 25 of us in the States were missing this microbe that's super important for our gut health, and it really helps with oxytocin, which is like the hormone for connection and for empathy. So people who are kind of, we're seeing all these
Mm-hmm.
psychological kind of health conditions kind of on the rise, and yeah, making our food safe to eat, this is a big part of it, restoring that gut health, restoring our brain health and all of this stuff. It's all connected, and yeah, it's about getting the word out and raising awareness. So, I really appreciate all the work you're doing, Smith.
Yeah, it's funny. You come a long way, Johnny. Plant Paradise. I love the fact that you were really working. You were really kind of stirring things up and trying to get different people, like making those pots of soup, dude. That's what I love to do too. And you're a fellow operator. You know what I mean? So I love working with you because you're such an operator too, and trying to find fresh meat for the table. You know what I mean? Because that's what it's all about, dude. I mean, I just want to be useful. Like Da Vinci said, I never tire of being useful. And being useful means being useful to other people in the society. Because I have enough, dude. I don't need that much anyway. I find I'm much happier with less. And one of my favorite things to like being on the Hobo Railroad is proving that I can live off the waste of others. That's one of the things I love about being on a farm, dude, because you can easily live off the waste of a farm. It's not hard. 50% of the food, gets wasted before it even leaves the farm. And then also it gets to the grocery store. It's got one little spot on it. That's not getting sold. It's going in the garbage, And so I had these kind of paradigm shifting moments. One was when I learned how to dumpster dive. And at first, you're like, it's kind of gross. And, you're kind of, but then you just stay at it because you learn that if you just keep checking one day, man, you're going to hit a jackpot, right? And this particular day, it was a dumpster that was completely full of organic spinach. Okay. And they were in containers, plastic containers. I mean, the whole dumpster, Johnny. Okay. It was a clean dumpster and it was full. And I'm like, what? So I look, the stuff didn't expire for 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks left until it expired. Why it was in the dumpster? I'll never know. Okay. This stuff was from California, which means it was grown in California, shipped, God knows how, gasoline trucks, airplanes, I don't know, all the way to Montreal, Canada to end up in a dumpster, Johnny. So then loading it up in the car, pack the car with all the stuff, take it home, process it because you can't eat it all fresh. Either process it, make it into stuff, give it away to people, and then recycle the plastic. So I go from feeling bad about it, about dumpster diving, to feeling like a superhero because I'm saving food that would have been wasted. I'm recycling plastic. I'm feeding the community. I mean, in Christmas time, one of my friends on the plateau called me Organic Santa Claus. That was my nickname because there's so much food, Johnny, especially during Christmas, that gets wasted. And I really like to dumpster dive when it's cold as well, because when it's frozen is the best time because people, I mean, look, if you're in the freezer section and people act like, okay, you have something that's frozen, and then, okay, let's see, it just turned midnight, so this is expired. Like it magically goes bad or something. It's ridiculous. They put it in a box out. It's literally frozen. I seen them put it right there. I'm like, oh, that's a box full of delicious organic meat. Like I just put it in my bike and take it home, and my freezer's stocked. So I don't know, living on, and I would do this too at the big eco village I told you about. I would go into the big walk-in fridge because I was cooking all the food at first. I couldn't believe it. They took me there. They take me down into the basement, and there's this dry storage. And Johnny, it had every. It's like, they only buy the best stuff and eat the best stuff. So it's all the organic best stuff you can find. That's all it is. They have freezers and fridges, several of them that are big, including a walk-in one, okay, upstairs. And they're like, okay, this is where all the stuff is. I'm like, wow, I can just literally come in here and just take anything I want. Yeah, you can just take anything you want. I'm like, oh my God. It's like too much. So then slowly, I'm feeling bad every time I'm in there, but of course I get my coffee there and stuff. So I was drinking coffee. I would end up going into the regular, like, working fridge because there'd be these leftovers from the meals. And I would literally just eat the leftovers because there were so many of them. And otherwise it would just go in the compost. So I don't know though. I had to learn I learned at Laughing Dog Farm. It was a goat farm and it was human scale, probably the permaculture farm that I learned the most from. But I was like, pulling off this kind of crappy pieces of kale and stuff. He was like, "What are you doing, man?" I said, "Well, I didn't want to, eat the good stuff. Like, save the good stuff." He's like, "No, man." He's like, this is why we do this, so we can eat like kings. He's like, "That's goat food, man." Because the great thing about that system and having goats is you can just feed. They just live like kings because you feed them all the scraps, which is really, really good food. He's like, "No, this is why we do this, so we can eat the good stuff." So yeah, man, live like a king, and we all can. And so when you're picking, as you know, Johnny, when you eat food that is fresh, picked, okay, right where you are, and you eat it, the nutrient difference, you can feel it, man. It's like you're just like jacked with all these nutrients, and it's a different way of living and feeling. And it's like, I don't know, man. People don't even know what it feels like to feel good anymore. You know what I mean? They really don't because of the food that they eat.
I'm telling you, it is just unbelievable. All the health conditions we're seeing going parabolic. People have no idea how bad it is, most of us. And, you know, we're living 6 and 7 years less than we should be. So you do the math, that works out to 40 million of us, more than that, really, living 40 years less than we should be, on average here in the States. That's more than 10% of us are getting cut down in our prime. And it's kind of spread out on all of us, right? It's not just the years at the end of our lives that we're losing. It's everything in the moment, our potential right now, everything that we can be doing for each other, what we can be getting out of life. So yeah, it's just unbelievable that we've got all these distractions in the media and the news that they want to divide us about, where we've never had such a reason to come together to do better. Right here we got this. This is us in the States. This is every other Western country. 40 years ago, we're right in the middle of the pack with everybody. Now we're like 6 years behind them, and it's unbelievable that we've let this happen. This should be like on the news every night, like how many deaths have happened from this. So different ways to think about it. 40 million of us 40 years too early. Really, another way to think about it is 90 million of us losing our lives 20 years too soon. So it's just, however the math's working out, it's way too much is happening. And yet in
Hmm.
the meantime, people are so sick, they're really suffering. Autism, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancers, autoimmune diseases, everything's going parabolic. And it seems like they just want to push chemo on us. Now we're finding that there's all these great cancer drugs for if you know anybody with cancer out there, ivermectin, fenbendazole, menbendazole. These are drugs that are super safe, like the very safest drugs of all the drugs we have, drugs that we've had for 40 years. They're finding work great for cancer. People are getting censored, posting out there about their experiences and sharing studies on it. So it's unreal.
Yeah, man. It's the pharmaceutical stuff. You just seen how it's legal drugs have kind of taken over, and you see people going and getting these pills and stuff, and everyone's on pills. So I always feared them and wouldn't take any, almost anything people would try to give me. Some doctor. I say, you guys are trained by the AMA, like American Medical Association. You're trained to give pills. Like you never once did you ever say eat this? You know what I mean? Eat healthier. Like but that's not part of holistic health, to just give a pill and that's it. um it's shocking, man. It really is shocking, and it comes back to the conversation we were having before about the idea that all science is good science. um just because something is scientific or science based, or that it was created by science or scientists, doesn't make it good. Okay, you ever see movies where scientists make things that don't turn out so well? It happens. Okay. So that doesn't to say that we haven't made leaps and bounds with this stuff, because look, everyone always talks about the good old days, Johnny, but the truth is, in the good old days, people died. Okay. You ever see a graveyard from 100 years ago? All these kids, they die when they're 14 and shit. So we have, and that graph that you showed is shocking, dude. I mean, the fact that we're supposed to be the richest country in the world or whatever on paper, okay, and that is not wealth, dude. Health is wealth, and it's like Crypto Zero always talks about. Jimmy, he he's talking about, as soon as people have sound money with crypto, now they want to live longer. They're like, hey, I want to live. Life is good. I want to live. So then they discover uh, health and eating healthy food, and they discover permaculture and soil, dude. Okay, so that is true health, and I think people really forgot, because we're so focused on the almighty dollar, and as one had said, the greatest minds of our generation are trying to get people to click on ads, dude. And there something has got to give, and I think that since COVID, that has we've really shown, like the mental health crisis has exploded. Housing, health, food. Okay, we saw the supply chain, what happened there. So we need resilience back into that, not just maximized. It's like we can. Okay, yeah, it produce a million of them, right? The whole mass manufacturing. Great, we have mass manufacturing, awesome, but let's not sacrifice quality for quantity. And the food, dude, as you know, okay, is garbage. And yes, community gardens and all this stuff, it's a nice wrap and it makes people feel good. But what we need are permanent green infrastructure systems. I'm talking about parks, schools, rest areas, all that stuff integrated, dude. Food forests, 7 layers, educational, teach the kids young. There's signs. It tells people when to do it, when to not do it, what's safe and what isn't. Um, but I think the first thing I think in the United States is someone's going to say, "What about liability?" Everyone says this. No, you can't eat this. The apples because someone might die or someone might get sick and sue us because they ate an apple from the tree. It's like, look, man, I don't know what to tell you. After a certain point, you got to say, you come on this land, you're liable for what happens. I mean, we were talking about this the other day. Like, people aren't allowed to die anymore, Johnny. Someone has to be responsible for everything. Like, we need a scapegoat. Someone needs to sue because someone died. People die, and unfortunately, they die from preventable things. Now in this age, it's shocking to see. And that graph you showed, man. I mean, the USA goes right off a cliff. We just go right off a cliff, dude. So what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we actually focused on? Because it seems like we're focused on stuff way far away from the United States, and we're not serving the people. And I'll end my plan by quoting one of my favorite philosophers. And he said, it's not as if that it's a bad thing if the Congress wants to do something for the people, right? Things that actually help people in the United States. It's not just that it's bad, it's that it's the end of the world, okay? That's how it's looked. So unless you're giving more money to rich people, okay, then it's a tragedy, right? Which means you starving people to death and making sure that they have nothing, as little as possible to survive, dude. So something's got to give, and part of it is just growing food. It's the best solution to so many problems, man. And Jeff Lawton had said you can solve all the world's problems in a garden, and I think that there's a lot of truth to that because, it, dude, it's leisure. This is what's coming with automation. People are going to have to accept a new reality of the fact that, yes, we want to take back our health, we're going to grow food, but that leisure defines culture. And so we should have been working 20 hours a week since the 70s anyway, according to who you ask. But now more than ever, people are going to, like, where are the jobs? Where are the jobs? Where are the jobs? The jobs are never coming back, Johnny. Not the way they used to be. Okay. And so I think accepting and building and designing a world that accepts that we don't have to work from our entire lives until we keel over dead as a defining characteristic of who we are. We don't have to define ourselves by work. I'm working class, been working since I was 10 years old. I have pride in my work. I have good work ethic. Okay. Anyone who knows me in spaces, all the stuff I do, I mean, I work nonstop. And so, but look, it's not a way to live when you're just working all the time and then being proud of the fact that you're being completely exploited by who you're employed by, et cetera. So how do we design systems? And that is to say, when I mean systems, I mean roads, I mean buildings, I mean cities, where it doesn't cost $50 every 10 steps, man. It's like you take 10 steps, you got to pay someone $10 just to exist. Like, there's no way to interact and do community and stuff without paying money and also get the things that we need. Because, again, learning how to exchange, people are talking about barter a lot more now, which is a good thing, but I don't think barter is the future. It would be cool if people bartered more, but I think the future is blockchain. Okay. And now we can do peer-to-peer transfers without some bank or whatever saying, or some whoever they think they are, to think that they're going to take $1 from every transaction so they can take that wealth and carve up the world as they may. And what about everyone else? I think giving people a voice and helping them be part of that conversation helps, man, a lot. And that's what we're doing, right?
I love that. Well said. Well said, Smith. Man, well, I appreciate you coming on today, and yeah, let's just keep on keeping on, and yeah, bring everybody together, and yeah, we got so much we can agree about, man. We've got big challenges, and man, I love what you're doing out there. So thank you for that, and yeah, any closing thoughts?
No, brother, I really appreciate you. Thanks, y'all. Follow Johnny Paradise, Plant Paradise 7. Free us from toxic food forest, free us from toxic tyranny. Hey, see you in spaces.
Man, you're the best, Smith. I'll see you around. Let's talk soon.
Peace.
Ciao. All right. And we are still live. See if I press this button this time.